I'd say that was the greatest generation to me.
And that was the generation that went off to war, and the generation that, really helped to define where we are as a nation.
I feel like that generation is sort of like stuck in their time.
On Channel 10, we are exploring the different generations.
Today, we begin with the oldest among us, the greatest and silent generations. We will explain the common threads among those people and what life was like when they grew up.
But first, we want you to weigh in on stereotypes about these generations. You can vote in the poll at the bottom of your screen by heading to our website, WBIR.com, or using our WBIR app.
People in the greatest and silent generations were born up until 1945. That means in 2019, they will be older than 74. Some people you may know of or who would be that age include Martin Luther King Jr., Mick Jagger, Morgan Freeman, and Jane Fonda. When these generations were born, the average gas price was 16 cents per gallon. As they were growing up, they saw the Great Depression, World War II, and the Korean War. They heard popular music from Frank Sinatra, Billie Holiday, and the Andrews Sisters. And now their biggest stereotypes are being overly proud Americans, taking a personal responsibility for their own well-being and the well-being of their family, and believing in the need for authority.
Now, it's important to note that the generations are fluid and the lines between them can be a bit fuzzy.
Absolutely. Now, to give you a little perspective, I got great perspective by sitting down with some members of the greatest generation, the silent generation, to get their perspective. Take a listen.
The greatest thing about that generation? Probably we did things ourselves. We grew up making up our own games, and we had our neighborhoods were just really close.
Oh, my generation was different. We didn't have a lot of transportation. We walked over a mile to school. The family is pretty more together. And I think more families had blessing before the meal.
I believe the togetherness. We always sat at the table together and ate.
And we did too.
You know, we had rules. We washed our hands, we brushed our teeth, and we came to the tables. Now I watch children, grandchildren take a plate and fill it at the bar, go over to the TV room and eat. They don't have that togetherness, that bonding that we have.
What do you think were the major milestones during the era of the greatest generation?
And then in 1960, we elected a president by the name of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And I was very devastated. That was one of the turning points in my life when he was assassinated.
So for me, in my lifetime, the greatest impact in living was the PC, was Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. That changed everything. And also, I think Gloria Steinem, women's liberation. I wanted to be a pharmacist. Women couldn't be pharmacists. I wanted to be a bank clerk. Women couldn't be bank clerks. I applied to Georgetown University, GW University. I had higher scores than most of the men. I was refused because they only took 3 women, because women just got pregnant and dropped out. All of those women changed my life and allowed me to live the life I wanted and become a chemist and things like that. I mean, I knew what my job was when I got married. I didn't necessarily like it, but I knew what it was. And it seems like things are even less defined now. That, you know, they don't have clear roles in any part of their lives is what I see.
What about the generation of now? And that is, I mean, what defines them these days?
I can speak from my own grandchildren. They have a lot of second chances, third chances, fourth chances. Well, you're trying, it's okay. And
one of the things that bothers me is the lack of being allowed to be competitive. Like the smaller children when they're playing baseball, softball, little kids football and all that. Used to be, you got a trophy if you were the #1 team. If you were the best player, you got a trophy. Now each team gets a trophy.
My grandchildren are educated in technology, and they're young, 10 years old and younger.
Even younger.
And it's a totally different world. It's a cyber world. They don't have to have bombs anymore. All they have to have are hackers to disrupt everything. But I think we're in this adjustment phase, just like with rock and roll music, with women's lib. It takes a while. Integration takes a while to adjust. And that's the way with the technology.
And it's opened up the world. When we were growing up, our world was
small.
The woods and the river and Loud, you know, the mountains. And
we're a global society now.
Yes, we are.
We had a family, a mother, a father, home. Our parents were married. So many times today we see people a few that are married, some that are married, but we see some that are domestic partners. And in addition to that, then we see people that get divorced and get remarried. So we have a number of blended families. I grew up, I can't think that I ever had a friend that had a divorced parent.
That's true.
Well, and in that generation, then the silent generation, there were things going on.
Yeah.
But they were in the closet or swept under the rug. They were not talked about.
Great insight.
Tell you how much I enjoyed spending time with those lovely ladies and gentlemen. Their insight is fantastic. And of course, everybody has an opinion about their generation and what makes them unique, but social scientists are tracking trends across generations.
Yeah, we spoke to a sociologist who says one of the biggest trends within the greatest and silent generations is how they engage with their communities.
The silent generation in part refers to a sense of civic duty, and so there's a high level of institutional commitment that oftentimes is spoken about with regard to Americans who are older.
Another big trend is religion.
That's right. According to a Pew Research survey, 85% of the silent generation say religion is important in their lives. 51% say they attend a religious service at least once a week.
Oldest Americans have higher levels of affiliation with religion. They're more likely to have a stated traditional affiliation, you know, I am XYZ tradition. They may be more likely to attend church, more likely to participate in various forms of religiosity, and that declines the younger you get among Americans.
We asked you how you would define the greatest and silent generations. We've had more than 200 of you weighing in on our poll today, and the majority of you saying this generation is hardworking. In fact, 80% of you, and you can see patriotic 12%, only 8% set in their ways.
They are hardworking.
Yes.
And right now at WBIR.com, you can find a breakdown of all the living generations, hear from social scientists about the biggest trends for each generation, and you too can take a quiz to find out which generation you act like the most. Tune in tomorrow at 5:30 as we change our focus to the baby boomer generation.